Hello, Broncos Country, and welcome to another week of Orange Weekly After Dark. Upsetting game yesterday, as everyone I'm sure is aware. Go ahead and start dropping your comments, questions, anything that you would like to address. We do have a special guest coming on tonight, which we will get to in just a second. But first, quick word from our sponsor, Pigskin Podcast. So another week in the NFL season means another shot to win big at DraftKings Sportsbook, which is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. If you are a new customer and you bet just $1 single on any NFL game, you can win $100 in free bets if either team scores a point. And in case you were wondering, the last 0-0 tie in the NFL was 1943. So in terms of safe bets, this is probably the safest one you can get. And don't worry, Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet. DraftKings won't leave you empty-handed either. You can play for huge cash prizes all season long through DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sport Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars. So what do you need to do? You simply need to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Throw $1 on any NFL game, and you can win $100 in free bets if either team scores a single point. And again, that's promo code TPPN. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook. You do have to be 21 years or older. New customers only, minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. For more information, see DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And remember, please, if you do have a gambling problem or somebody you know has a gambling problem, you can always call 1-800-GAMBLER. For resources and help. So now on to our show. Everyone, again, exciting day today as we are bringing on a guest. You're going to hear some back and forth, and then we will definitely get to all your comments. But big question going around Broncos Country is obviously what should happen with Vic Fangio? Should we fire him? Should we not? And so here to discuss, and I'm not going to say he's wrong in his opinions. I'm not going to say before he can even defend himself that he is wrong and he's only good with betting. I'm not going to say any of that stuff, no matter how true it might be. But joining me tonight, everyone, is the waging Ray from Raygers. Ray, how are we doing tonight?
Hey, I heard the promo and I was thinking, did somebody say gambling? Did somebody say DraftKings? Because that's normally what I'm here for. What's going on, y'all? Great to see you all. It's I see some familiar names in the chat. That's always a good time. I'm Ray. I run the Raygers show, which is a sports betting show that we have here on Orange Weekly. And I cannot wait to prove you wrong today. I already see the comments coming, baby. I think Broncos Country's on my side when it comes to Vic, and I think there's a lot of stuff we can get into about the last couple of games and what we got moving forward.
Yeah, I see some of these comments coming through. Travis, I'm not going to put your comment up there yet.
You stick around, Travis.
Here's the benefit of hosting this show is I get full control of who I show and who I don't. It's a great benefit, and consider it home field advantage, if you will. But okay, obviously Broncos 3-2 after a 3-0 start. They've played obviously three not so great teams. Very solid team in the Ravens, who just had a monster comeback tonight, and then a so-so team with the Steelers. They were at Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh's not winning the Super Bowl by any means this year. 3-0 against the easy teams, 0-2 against the better teams. Ray, I'll open the floor to you first. I will let you say your piece, and we will just go from there. So what are your thoughts? What's going on, and why should we be considering getting rid of Vic?
Yeah, so the for me, it comes down to a little bit more of the feel and the look as opposed to the record. Are we panicking? Maybe. I mean, the reality of the situation is after we were 3-0, the NFL power ratings had the Broncos, I think, at the 14th or 15th best team in the league. At 3-0, they had multiple 1 or 2 teams, or I don't think they had any 0-3 teams, but multiple 1 and 2 teams ahead of the Broncos in that power ranking. The AFC West, the Broncos were the 4th team on that power ranking of the 4 AFC West teams. And so I don't think I share an overreaction to say at 3-0, we were probably the worst 3-0 team in the NFL at that point in time. And of course, the ESPN ratings say that. The thing about the first 3 games, though, is they did pass the eye test for me for the most part. I mean, there was certainly some head-scratching moments from Vic again. Seemed like some moments of miscommunication, moments of poor clock management, special teams. We won't even get to McMahon here. We'll leave him just to
he's a category on his own right now.
That's too easy, but then what it ends up happening, and this is the sentiment that I'm hoping to hear from the fans out there today, is in Broncos country. It's for the last 3 years, it's been like little glimpse of hope. You kind of get your hopes up, and then your hopes get crushed. And then you start to feel a little bit better about a Broncos fan, and then you watch a piss-poor performance like we saw in the first half last week, or you see just an embarrassment at home, and that cycle is what's killing me. And I think the question that we'll sort of get into today is, what is causing that, right? Is it the roster? Is it the coaching? Is it the lack of ownership? But why does it seem 6 years now since the Payton era, 7 years now since the Payton era, and we're here just spinning our wheels once again? And I tend to be on the side that feels like we're falling off the tracks right now. I mean, I think we could easily lose the next 2 games. We have 2 really tough games coming up. We'll see what happens with Gruden, now being out. We'll get there in a second, I'm sure. We could easily be 3-7. I don't know, maybe 4-6 at the bye week. And at that point, the season's the lost cause.
Yeah, I do agree that this next stretch is as early in the season it's probably the most important stretch of the season for the Broncos. I think it's an absolute requirement for the Broncos to beat the Raiders.
Yep.
And then I would say it's very important to find a way to go 3-0 in these next 3 games. But I would say it's necessary to at least go 2-1 with one of those wins being the Raiders. You can't lose against the Raiders right now. But I'm with you. I think it's at a critical juncture. But here's the thing. I think, the Browns showed a lot of weaknesses against the Chargers.
Sure.
So who's to say, we could be 4-6. Well, shoot, we can be 6-2 coming up here,
Sure.
And so here's the thing with me is, for me, I think I think at the crux of the matter is the lack of ownership. I think when there's no real accountability down the board, a lot of these leaks start to happen.
Sure.
But I think in terms of Vic, I think over the past couple years, especially last year, with how decimated we were with injuries, on top of having no depth and constantly being outmatched, he always gave the team a chance to win with his game planning. How many times were the Broncos totally blown out of the water last year? Not many at all. Even this year, even yesterday, it came down to a 1 possession game, right? So for me, the issue comes down to, is this a game planning issue? I really don't think so, because if it was, we'd be getting blown out of the water all the time. We would have no chance. So for me, when it's these close games, these 1 possession games, you got to start looking at the players and holding the players accountable, right? And for me, 2 games really come to mind so far this season. One being the game against Jacksonville, where I thought they played like crap, to be honest with you, and got away with it because we were playing a team that's now lost 20 games in a row. Yeah. God bless Jacksonville fans.
Sure.
At least we're not there. But we were able to get away with that lackadaisical, sloppy play because we're playing the Jacks. And I addressed it. I said in our group chat, I said it here the following night, that if we played the Ravens like we did that way, we were screwed. Well, sure enough, come game against Ravens, and to be fair, I think that was a poor game all around, coaching, player-wise, all whatever. Yesterday, though, I think the onus is on the players. And I would say that it was the case for most of the time last year as well, is when you have a team that, when they follow the game plan, has a chance to win, then you start looking at some of the mistakes that could have flipped the game, right? And all the mistakes that I saw yesterday were player-owned, mental mistakes of poor judgment, lack of knowledge of rules, which, come on, you're a professional football player. How do you not know you can't spike the football outside the end zone? That's football 101 at that point.
Sure.
You take a stupid penalty on special teams yet again, on a leveraging penalty, which, again, better. That's a penalty. That changes the game right there. Instead of the Steelers being able to extend that drive and get a touchdown, they settle for 3. So now we got a possible likely touchdown with the Broncos, that first and goal on the 2 instead of the 7. You've got the field goal instead of a touchdown. You've got 2 dropped interceptions from Jackson. You've got, that follow-up play after the penalty of Williams where he spiked the ball.
Right.
You got
Glasgow blows the coverage and you get a
well, that's just it. And so now you have the right play drawn up, and now you got miscommunication. And to me, and what we talked about a little bit in our chat yesterday, where it started from the get-go, right? It started with the deep, with Fuller not being ready to play. He didn't even show up to Pittsburgh. I don't know where he was. So defensively, you have that big drive to start with. And then the first offensive play of the game, you take a delay of game penalty.
Yeah, and I think, and we got into this, I think, last week. And one quick thing is as you mentioned, ownership is certainly, I think, something that I don't think we've quite, really addressed on the impact of not having a solid owner there. And I don't want to go too far back, but I do think the biggest blemish on John Elway's career is the hiring of Vance Joseph. I think that was one of the biggest fumbles in his career, particularly with Shanahan and a couple of other really key coaches that were available on the market there. We've just been in this really disaster of a coaching carousel. And certainly I think we have a little bit of a different opinion. Now, the second piece, I think this is an interesting question for the fans out there that are listening with us and riding with us. We appreciate y'all so much at Orange Weekly. Is that first play of the game, and let's just talk about the first play of the game where they come out, the offense comes out and they take a delay of game. Is that the coach's fault or is that the player's fault? And as we've discussed, you believe that that's the player's fault. I believe that's the coaching's fault. And when I think about that and I pose the question to the Orange Weekly crew, would that ever happen to a Bill Belichick coach team? Would they ever take a delay game on the first play of the game with this exact roster? I think it's an interesting question to think about. I certainly don't think you're arguing that Vic is in the Bill Belichick category. I don't think you're saying that he's a top 5 coach in the NFL.
Absolutely not.
But it's an interesting philosophical divide, right? Are moments like that? Are moments where, potentially there is a leveraging penalty that's happening on special teams. Is that really the responsibility of the player or is that the responsibility of the coaching staff? And I tend to be a player defender typically just by nature. And to me, the delay game on the first play, that's on Vic, if you ask me. But I think that's where maybe some of our differences come in a little bit. And thanks, Steve, for that comment. Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's fault.
Steve, everybody's to blame. And there's truth to that. I think for me, though, I'm a bit harsher on the players because in my eyes, these are professionals. These are guys making millions of dollars to play their craft. They are supposed to be the best of the best, athletic-wise, football-wise, football IQ-wise. So you're telling me in all of years of football, and it's not like it was a recent rule change either. I would maybe give some leeway of, hey, this leveraging thing was brand new. First year doing this. Sure. Okay. You forgot old habits, whatever. This has been a rule for years now.
Right.
You know better. That is, you make that play dozens of times a game.
And, let's take that leveraging play for just a second though, and you know what that leveraging play did for me, though? You know what that leveraging play was? That was a reek of desperation. I think in that moment when it happened in the game, I think Broncos, and I was feeling this as a fan. It was in the first late first half. I was feeling hopeless as a fan. And I think you get a guy that's pressing a little bit, right? That just is trying to make something happen, trying to make a big play. And what you end up getting is you get a guy who maybe does something that's a little bit more out of character, right? That they sort of extend the play a little bit. But I'm with you. I think there certainly should be ownership on both ends of that, right? Both need to be accountable. Here's the question I got for you. Do you believe this roster is a top half of the league roster let's just say when relatively healthy? Where are we at league wise? Top half, bottom half? Where do you think we are as a roster?
That's an interesting question because I think the Broncos entering this year have such an interesting dynamic. And I think that the defense is a top 5 defense. But I think offensively, they're a bottom 5 if I'm being cynical, bottom 10 if I'm being optimistic.
Sure.
And so if you average it out, I think we're right within that middle pack because they're separated so differently, and so that makes it a bit harder.
Because I think the record might tell us what the difference, right? If we believe that the Broncos have a top 10 roster, but we end up with a 20th or 24th best in the league record, then I think we can sort of point the needle like maybe towards that coaching staff. But if you're saying, hey, we're 50-50 roster, maybe we are middle of the pack type of roster, top to bottom. Maybe 8 and 9 is just where Vic's, that's just, it doesn't matter what Vic was going to do. If he ends up at 8 and 9, then I guess Vic didn't hurt him, but didn't help him. Right. I guess would be kind of the thought process there. So,
right. And I think, for me, one of the bigger issues, and we talked about this again earlier, is it's a lack of leadership from the players. I mean, I agree with Ian right here. It felt like most of our players were still on the plane. To me, that is a player issue. That to not be ready when the game starts, and it epitomized itself in that first offensive play where they took a delay of game. If you were not ready by the time you show up to the field, you have all your warm-ups, you have all that time to prep, you have all that, especially the offense, you have your defense takes the field first. So you've got all of that time to get ready. And obviously the defense didn't show up either. You have all that time. To me, that is a player issue. That is your job, is to show up ready. It's the equivalent, if your boss tells you, hey, here's a presentation I need you to deliver at 8 a.m. Here's all the information. Here's the key points I want you to address. Here's some likely questions that you should be ready for. So be ready. Starts at 8 a.m. on Monday, and you stroll in at 10 a.m., shirt untucked, coffee stain, hair undone, and you're just a mess. Well, is that on your boss? No, your boss laid out what he expected of you. Your boss told you some things to expect, and you still kind of stroll in. No one's going to fire your boss over that. And so for me, that lack of preparation. And so here's my argument with the Belichick era is, look who he had as leaders on his team. I don't think it was more so it wouldn't happen because of Bill Belichick. I would say it wouldn't happen because of Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady was every bit, if not more, hyper focused on those details than Belichick, and was just more animated about it as well. And and I think you see that too, where Tom Brady leaves, a lot of that leadership from the Patriots team leaves, and now Bill Belichick, who I think is one of the best coaches in NFL history, they've been struggling. And so I think that leadership is one of the keys that the Broncos are still missing. Von Miller's the leader of the team, and he's been a bit quiet, but take out Von Miller, who the heck is a leader on this team anymore?
Yeah, and Von Miller he's not a vocal leader like you might see. That was DeMarcus Ware, right? That's the reason why we got DeMarcus Ware, was to provide that leadership on that side. And I think Ian, let's go back to that comment that Ian had made about the team being on the plane still in the fourth quarter. Let's go back to the ownership. I mean, if you look at the roots of what happened in that thing, and if you've done some digging, the problem why the Broncos left so late to Pittsburgh is because they didn't book their hotel in time, and there was no place in Pittsburgh for them to have their team meetings. So they decided to have their team meetings in Denver Saturday morning and then fly to Pittsburgh. So I'm just guessing, let's go back to your analogy of your work. Your boss is still responsible to get the meeting set up. Your boss is still responsible to do some of those things. Those things didn't happen. The other part, I think you brought up an interesting analogy about the responsibility. Let me ask you this then. I think your boss should have a feel, if we're going to use this job analogy, of ensuring that the people are in the positions that they're best equipped to be doing. And if we look at Vic and Vic's specialty, 37 years, they literally built the NFL around Vic Fangio. He's so damn old. He was back when they were playing 8 men on the football field. His defense showed up. It's been abysmal for 2 weeks now. And so I think when we think about those kinds of things, this era of these head coaches that want to have so much hands-on on one side of the ball or the other, it might be a detriment. And to be honest, I don't think Vic's doing a good job with the defense just in this moment right now. I mean, to your point, right? We get Fuller, who shows up and he looks like just a hot steaming pile of doo-doo. I mean, P.I. called the 2 touchdown passes on Fuller. I mean, he had a horrible day. We get Vaughn in coverage. I've heard the analysis and I've heard the breakdown of Vaughn. Don't matter what, Vaughn was in the wrong position. He shouldn't be guarding Claypool. I could have probably completed that pass to Claypool with Vaughn guarding him, to be completely honest. I mean, so there's some of those things that I'm struggling with the Vic situation as well. As it's not like his defense is smashing it. And let's not even get started with. I mean, here's the craziest part, right? You take Vic, the defensive coordinator, you take Shurmur, the offensive coordinator, and you take McMahon. If you were to rank those 3, Vic is actually the best coordinator that we have on this staff, and I don't think that is a good recipe for a winning, so maybe it's not necessarily all on Vic, but I think the totality of the coaching staff right now is, boy, that is a bad combo of three. If you ask me, on average.
I do agree with that. And, we can get into Shurmur in a little bit here, because I think if there is a coordinator to get rid of, or a coach to get rid of right now, again, taking McMahon out of the question because he's in a league of his own. But I think, Shurmur is the question in play. But I think for Fangio as the head coach, and you're right, that the defense past couple of weeks, especially on the run game, it's a challenge with the Ravens. You've got a true dual threat quarterback.
Right, totally.
You don't have a dual threat quarterback in the Steelers.
Big Ben
moves slower than molasses on a cold day.
Mm-hmm.
But that run game was rough. But again, at the end of the day, injuries are at play, right? Where I think he would have normally pulled Fuller immediately, but Darby, who would have been the person to replace him, was still inactive because he's coming back from his injury. So who do you replace him with? Yeah. And so I think that's part of the juggle. I'm not one to make the injury as the excuse of end all be all.
Sure.
But it's a role. It's a piece of the puzzle. And I think to that point too, you got to understand that the head coach's job is to give his team a chance to win. And that's game planning, that's scouting. Yeah. And you're right, there were some questionable things. Miller in coverage is stupid. I won't try to argue that one. But then, you also have Surtain with a missed tackle that would have cut the play 20 yards shorter. And so a bit of balance there too. But at the end of the day, I think the game plan, especially when it was finally followed in the fourth quarter and the players decided to, strap on their laces and show up, gave them a chance to win. And again, it came to a one possession game where if you eliminate those stupid, boneheaded mental mistakes,
totally
could easily be a Broncos victory at that point. Yeah, and so at that point, it'd be different if we're constantly, we're losing by 2, 3, 4 possessions. Okay, something in the game plan is going wrong, bad. But at what point, when you're constantly, all these games, you're just losing by, 3 points, 7 points, 8 points. At what point, do you start looking at these mistakes? Again, death by inches, right?
Right. And that's what I was just going to say, so, you have a coach, though, that comes in and says, hey, death by inches, this is what we're going to live by. We're going to live and die by that. And then you have a game where it was death by yards and yards and yards, because it just seemed like that the Broncos couldn't follow through that. And again, where does the ownership fall? It's probably a little bit on everything in that case.
Sure.
How do you get the players to play more? I mean, nobody. I don't know how much coaching it's going to take to get AJ Johnson to catch the one of the 2 interceptions, right? And that changes the entire dynamic of the game, So
right.
Those are the kinds of things that I think are fresh. I don't lose games though. Right now, what's happening the last 2 weeks, I don't feel like the Indianapolis Colts. I don't feel like the Lions, who have lost back-to-back weeks for the first time in NFL history to 50-yard plus field goals to win the game. In those games, it feels competitive. I know you keep saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers was a one-possession game. I didn't feel competitive in that game until like the last 7 minutes of that game. And I think what we ended up seeing was Pittsburgh was actually a pretty hot garbage team, and they just kind of started to catch up with them. But, I think you and I kind of have some good points that we agree on. I think there's some things that I think we're just going to disagree on no matter what.
Right. I mean, you're going to continue to be wrong about things, and that's your choice. That's your choice. I can't stop you.
Hey, man, I'll just wait until George Payton fires Vic at some point in time this year, and then I won't have to say anything else. But, those are the things I think, I'll make a quick analogy. Let's go back to the Nuggets. Hopefully you guys got some folks out here in Broncos country that might be Nuggets fans. But for all of those years with Karl Malone, right, the Nuggets were a 75-win team in the Carmelo Anthony era. They were first round of the playoffs, and they just couldn't seem to do something to break through that ceiling. And they made a coaching change. It was a couple of ugly years, and now we're here, at the next level here with, Nuggets knocking on the doorstep of an NBA caliber championship team. I just beg the question again. What happens if the Broncos are 7-9 again this year? Do you rinse and repeat again with all the same pieces, or what gives?
Right. And I think that's going to be an interesting question because, and going back real quick to Kyle's comment, I would make the argument, hey, who did the Rams just bring in that's making them so successful this year? Goff. Yeah. They brought in a leader quarterback.
Or Stafford. They got rid of Goff.
Stafford, sorry. Yeah. Got it backwards. They brought in Stafford, a leader quarterback from Detroit, who's just pigeonholed in Detroit for so long. But I think that's been the X factor, right? Getting some of these other comments, which were kind of funny. But you're right. If we get to a place where,
that's a funny comment.
If we miss the playoffs by a decent amount, at that point, honestly, if I'm George Payton, I'm blowing everything up. Not just the coaching staff. We are breaking this roster down. We're trading Von Miller. We're trading Sutton. We are getting rid of, Jackson. We're maybe keeping Judy and Sertan, your young guys, but we're trading for that first overall draft pick to get a quarterback. And we're finding a young quarterback. We're finding a young coach, maybe offensively minded, as Steve just mentioned here. But at that point, I think you just got to say, hey, because like you said, at this point, we're just spinning wheels.
Right. And I think, the coaching philosophy for me on the Vic side of things, and let's just assume Vic's doing a decent job at the defensive coordinator side. And I don't want to argue the defensive coordinator side because I think the Broncos are still, by PFF ratings are still in the top, a little bit. They are only averaging like 8 points. Opponents are only averaging 8 points through the first 3 weeks. I mean, the defense is playing just fine. But to me, then the question becomes I don't think the offense is passing the eye test. I don't think certainly special teams isn't passing the eye test, but Vic's has a sense of complacency about him. I don't think Vic's, I hate the mentality. I'm going to go down with my guys. I mean, something's got to give, and so I think, I would like to see a coach either be willing to bring in, that frontline top tier talent on all of those coordinator positions. Listen, this is a perfect example. You're a hockey guy. What did the Avs finally do 3 or 4 years ago in just around their philosophy, around their coaching staff? I mean, the Avs finally started to just pay their coaches top tier money in the NFL. I think, I don't know what the stat was for the Avs, but for like 15 years, they had like the bottom 5 or 6 paid coach in the NHL. They finally, with our boys over there, Wah and other folks that came in, and Forsberg, they just finally started to pay people for the best coaching that happened. And look at the Avs now, right? Perennial contenders each and every year because they finally got some of those pieces in place. I'm just curious about the Broncos philosophy on that, man. And God, Shurmur, I don't think anybody here is arguing that Shurmur's doing a great job. I haven't heard a single person, not on any radio waves, not on our group, not anybody in Broncos Country think Shurmur's doing a good job. Hell, McMahon should have been fired the third week of last year, and I don't even know how the hell he still has a coach. You want to talk about he got tenure in the NFL. I don't even know how the hell he got tenure in the NFL. So there's some of those things that really I think make you more frustrated as a fan.
Sure. And I totally agree. And especially with the Shurmur front, and McMahon even, last year, he should have gone during the offseason. How much does the new GM come into play, where the new GM says, hey, I want to keep it as it is just so I can get a baseline. And right now the struggle for me is in terms of Shurmur, what do? You fire him. Then what? Who takes over that responsibility? And do you think that, at that point, if you're Vic or you're George Payton, do you think that one of your lower tier assistants can really step up to the plate? I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But my issue with Shurmur right now, I know your biggest qualm is the running on second and long.
Oh my God.
And for me, I think it's a microcosm of the bigger issue. Where for me, I don't mind running on second and long every now and then. When the defense that you're playing is playing pass and you can run a play and catch them off guard, that's a great call. The issue with Shurmur is he has become so freaking predictable in his play calling that now these teams have 5 weeks of film now where they go, second and long, they're going to run it. We know they're going to run it. So now they're stacking the box. There's no chance for a run play to succeed, but Shurmur just won't get out of that pattern. And so for me, the bigger issue with Shurmur isn't necessarily, those one-offs that, if you just break down the film, okay, that there was that 1 second 10 that didn't work, that 1 second and 10. He does this every freaking time. Yeah. Every second along, every single week.
Every single week.
He's become so predictable in everything he does that it's easy to call again. It's easy to call a game defensively against Pat Shurmur right now.
Run, pass.
Easiest in the league.
Run, pass. Run, pass. That's what happens every time. And if you're looking at the stats here for folks that are out there, the Broncos are averaging the second worst or second best, I'm not sure the best way to say it, the second longest third downs in the entire NFL right now through the first 5 weeks. So on third down, on average, we have the second longest. There's only one team that has worst third down, down in distances than the Broncos do currently. And to me, it's just that frustration. It just goes run. And of course, Williams, he'll break one off. And if you got to run it 10 times and Williams gets his 40-yard or 50-yard deal, that's fine. But, I mean, just the lack of creativity, I think, is what kills me. And what did the Broncos run? I think 12 plays in the first half. I mean, that is – I think Big Ben had 12 plays on the first drive, I mean, that stuff like that is just – that's killer. That's
absolutely.
Killer.
And to make that stat even scarier, you're right, whether they're the second worst in yards to go on third down, but what's even scarier is they are dead last in third down
conversions. Yeah.
So the only way you can make that that reality even worse is to throw that one in there.
Right.
So even the team doing worse than us in yards to go is still converting better. But that brings up another interesting point, which I never knew Bridgewater could throw the ball that far. Bridgewater can throw the freaking ball. And so, And so that was one of the issues yesterday is all these third and longs, he's throwing 2, 3, 4 yards.
Yeah. And those
behind the stick. So when he can air it out, at that point, why not? Worst case, say you throw a 40-yard bomb and you turn it over.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's a punt. But what else can happen? You can catch the ball. You can draw a pass interference and the ball that far. Why are we? And I'm not saying you should do that every single down. But why is it every single third down where we're 3rd and 8 that you're throwing behind the sticks?
Yeah, that is one thing I will say in the first 5 weeks that is bizarre to me is the 15-yard passing game is just totally non-existent. And I'm not sure if that's schematically a combination of the two things, but you're right. I mean, all we see is a 5-yard dump or we see a 30-yard attempt down the field. There's none of those deep 10 or 15-yard ins or outs or big 10, 15-yard hook routes. I don't see any of that. It's a very bizarre thing.
I think that is where we are really missing Judy right now. That slot quick receiver. And I think that's the missing piece there, but still you got to find a way around that, right? You can't just, again, injuries are a piece of the puzzle. It's not an excuse. Yeah. And so you got to find a way around that.
And Steve, you bring up an interesting question here. Again, I'm Ray from the Raygers show. We do the fantasy and sports betting deal. Broncos have already opened up as a -3 favorite against the Raiders at home. I don't know how the Gruden change happens, but I think, Steve, to your question there, if they lose to the Raiders, is there a coaching change? My guess is no, because we have the short week to the Thursday night game. But I'm not advocating for some firing to happen, but if there was going to be something that was going to happen, it would most likely happen after that Thursday night game. So if we have 2 piss poor performances, let's say we get blown out by the Raiders at home, and then the Browns come in and drop a 40 burger, or we go into Cleveland and they drop a 40 burger on us like they did against the Chargers. Of course, the Chargers won, but and we look like crap for 2 more weeks. I mean, could there be a change? If there were going to be early in the season, that will be when it's going to happen. It's going to be right after the Browns game. So,
right, and otherwise, probably the bye week, I would say, would be the second.
And then we got to wait till week 10 if anything crazy happens. Then honestly, I mean, if we want to talk week 10, if we're totally out of it, I mean, I think scenarios like Drew Lock playing the rest of the year, coaches, I think all of that is on the table then.
Right, and I would say at that point too, that's where people start calling for coaches' heads. But at that point, why bother? If your season's done week 10, the coaching staff has gone into the year anyways. At that point, why bother finding them in season? Like, just let them ride their paycheck till the end of the year. They know they're gone anyways. So it's definitely some interesting components there. What we do know for sure, without a doubt, I shouldn't say without a doubt. What is, I would say, the safe bet in this case is Fangio will not be fired for reasons that Gruden was.
Sure. And I think as the gambling guy on the team here, Vic was the odds-on favorite at the start of the year to be the first coach fired. I don't think Gruden was even in the top 5 or 8 of those coaches. So, goes to show that things can happen on a drop of a hat. And gosh, you want to take the attention away from Urban Meyer. You did it, John Gruden. Good job, buddy.
Urban Meyer is having himself a nice drink tonight.
Doing a little thumbs up, like, hey, thanks, bro. You really took the heat off of me. Goodness gracious, man. It's a disaster over there in Vegas. I don't even know.
It's a nightmare for sure. And that does bring an interesting play in for our upcoming game, which is against the Raiders. We'll see how they manage that. Not just the new coach, which is going to be one of their assistants, but just the drama around it, the distractions, it's going to be talked about in all their interviews. So, instead of just being able to focus on the game, they're having all these outside distractions. Totally. So it'll be interesting. And, here's the other thing is they've come off 2 poor performances as well. I mean, they just lost to the Bears.
They looked amazing the first 3 weeks. I thought the Raiders were looking like a darling.
They were scaring me, right? And now, so now you got this crucial game for both teams with identical records, both, divisional when needed, both coming off 2 bad weeks. I think this right here kind of, this is why it's a must win, because it's a divisional team, right. But this is a game that can either get you back on that right path and get those wheels turning again, or it totally derails you. You find yourself 500 after a 3-0 start, and who knows where you go from there. So
yeah, I hate to use the word must win, but yeah, this is probably getting closer to a likelihood of gearing towards the playoff and not likelihood gear. It's like the path, right? You might find the Rainbow Road shortcut later in either direction, but I think to stay on the most, you more likely to make the playoffs than not. You gotta win on Sunday. You lose that one, you're probably on the path of more likely not to make the playoffs at that point.
Absolutely. And what makes the bit more interesting too, with how close the AFC West is right now. I mean, with how badly the Broncos have been the last couple of weeks, they're still just 1 game back from the divisional lead.
Right. And
Chargers have won 4. We've won 3. Chiefs are down at 2 still, which granted they've had a difficult.
They've had the harder part of the first 5. Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. But the fact is they're looking beatable. They're looking very beatable all of a sudden.
Heck, the Broncos might be able to score 30 against the Chiefs at this point in time.
Right. And so, it makes these early divisional games, because we don't play the Chiefs for a while. I mean, we play them close, not quite, but close to back-to-back at the end of the season.
Totally. And that's an interesting thing that's happened for the Broncos is, we sort of got we have very few divisional games. I think 1 through the first 7 weeks. And then you got to get the other 6 in or the other 5 in at some point in time. And I think you're right. I think we have a 4 out of 6 game stretch or something like that with divisional opponents right there towards the end through the month of December, I think, basically. So it's a really tough schedule, particularly. I mean, I honestly would love to play the Chiefs last week. I mean, it seems like right now they're beatable now.
Right.
But certainly we got to take care of business on Sunday.
Absolutely. Starts with Sunday for sure. All right, guys, we're going to start wrapping up. Thanks for all your comments. I've been trying to post them all. I'm sorry if I accidentally skipped over one. We've been having quite the discussion here. A bit different than our normal After Dark format, but definitely appreciate Ray coming on. It's been awesome. It's been fun. Always great to not have to talk the entire time. Able to give my voice a bit of a break.
Sure.
But other insights are always very helpful. So Ray, here we are. We're 3-2. Crucial juncture. Obviously. So let me ask you this one final big question for you. Something has to change. I think that's agreed. Let's say, for the sake of argument, you cannot address the coach and staff. You cannot make any changes coaching wise. What is one thing that you think needs to change for the Broncos to have a successful rest of the season and end up in the playoffs?
I'm going to operate on. Can I make an assumption on the back end? I'm going to assume that the Broncos are going to continue to get healthier. So I think that's one big bit. As we start to get maybe potentially Judy back in the lineup, we start to see our offensive line get a little bit healthier. We get a little bit more help and depth on the defensive side. So I'm just going to operate on the assumption that we're going to become a little bit healthier. To me, what it simply comes down to is we need to get our defense in a position where they can dictate the pace of the game. And we keep seeing this stat come up over and over, and we keep joking about it on the chat. But what is it, like 23 or 24? The longest streak in the NFL right now that the Broncos haven't scored on their opening drive. That literally means that the defense is playing from behind from the start of the game. And the recipe for the Broncos is the 2015 recipe, right? It's the recipe of getting a quick lead, being up 3-7, if you can get up 10 and, in the defense in 2015, if you got up 14, there was no team that could come back on you, period, because the defense could pin their ears back and they could get after you. At this point in time, man, the defense is being forced to play in these really difficult situations. Opposing offenses are eating up clock. I think the Ravens had a 7 or 8 minute drive in the third quarter. Big Ben had multiple 7-minute drives in the first half last week. It's putting our defense on the field for way too long. So to me, the answer is find a way to get quicker starts in the game somehow, some way, and make them play, give our defense the lead. I think if we can do that, we can beat teams like the Chiefs. We can beat teams like the Browns. Playing from behind, we will never beat Patrick Mahomes. We will never beat Baker. That's just not going to happen. So to me, that's really, if we want to come up with a recipe to maybe win 5 more games this year, maybe get it lucky and win maybe 6, maybe a 7th game, we got to play to our strengths. We got to give the defense the lead, and we got to see what happens from there. And I think, again, I don't think we're disagreeing about Vic's ability as a defensive coordinator. What we're disagreeing about is just the ability to manage, and maybe the three-headed dragon of the coaches together is really what's a challenge. So how do we give the defense the lead? I'd love to see the Broncos score on the opening drive, be up 7-0. I bet the pace of that game and the feel of that game would feel totally, totally different.
It would be a sight for sore eyes for sure. And, on the flip side, I gave you that kind of hard question of you can't touch the coaching staff. So I'll do the flip. I think Fangio, I'm preaching leadership player wise, but I think Fangio, the head coach, need to be the leader of the coaching staff. And so I think you need to have a very difficult internal discussion, a coaches only meeting, and you need tough love. You need to be calling Shurmur out and going, you need to fix this. You are the offensive quote unquote mastermind here. Out of everyone in this room, you're the offensive specialist. You need to fix this. Again, like you said, we've gone how long without an open touchdown? Fix it.
Yeah, 24, I think, drives now, or 24 games
Absolutely.
in a row now.
I'd be saying, McMahon, one more big script on special teams. I don't care who we replace you with, because you can pick up some random guy down on Colfax right now, and he would probably do a better job special teams wise. So you're looking at him and going, fix it. You're looking at, and we're talking every single coach down the road, your running back coach. Why the heck is our running game struggling so much? We're having some big plays here and there, but why can't we find a consistent game? And then looking at himself too and going, look, I need to be better defensively. And here are my plans on attack. And so I think there needs to be a very hard discussion internally coaching wise of accountability within the coaches. So
love it. Love it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, we're going to wrap up here. Unfortunately, we don't do a mile high salute on weeks where we lose. So hopefully next week we can get that mile high salute going again. But Ray, appreciate it. Any last thoughts here?
No thoughts, man. Hey, here at Orange Weekly, man, we love you all so much, man. We love doing this every day of the week. Feel free, any source of Broncos content you want it, we got it. So check out our podcast, including the Raygers podcast. And again, it don't matter what day it is, we got something for you. So just from Orange Weekly to the fans, man, we love y'all. Thanks for riding with us each and every night.
Absolutely. Make sure you turn to our main flagship show tomorrow at 7 p.m. where they will absolutely address the Gruden situation, break down more of the future lineups, as well as obviously the game against the Raiders. So make sure you turn into all of that. We've got other podcasts coming to you, post-game, pre-game, all that fun stuff. So Ray, appreciate your time tonight. It was a pleasure.
Always fun, brother.
All right. You take it easy. And hey, rough week, but still, let's go Broncos.
Go Broncos. Beat those Raiders.
Yeah.